Welcome to episode 115 of Instant Expertise Marketing. This is the show that helps you reframe your AI mindset in just under 15 minutes an episode. And today we're going to be discussing that MIT study that came out recently showing that 95% of AI pilots fail. And we're going to talk about what that has to do with our upcoming go-to-market collab with Pavilion. I'm Yvette Brown, co-founder of X Promos. I became an entrepreneur at 23 by starting a promotions agency with my then 29-year-old business partner, Shari Nomady. And together, for these last 36 plus odd years, we've built campaigns for global brands. And today, we're guiding leaders and creators to AI fluency so they can amplify their edge on their own terms, which results in productivity gains and better outcomes.
And by now, you know, I'm Shari Nomady. Yvette and I, we don't really always think alike. Well, hardly ever. She runs really fast, and I ask all the hard questions. But on AI, we are totally aligned. Dabbling today is killing teams, and fluency is how those people are winning today.
That's so true, Shari. And, here's the reality. According to MIT, 95% of the AI pilots they looked at failed to scale. And that's not hype, right? This is from the study. And you can quibble about the outcomes and say they didn't look at certain industries and this and that. But if you're in the space at all, you can tell that that general vibe is accurate. It's ringing true because many of the AI pilots out there are not producing as expected. And we're here to tell you why and how you can fix it.
So if you're in one of those go-to-market roles, then you're probably feeling the pain we're talking about. Proof of concepts that never move, tools that just don't stick, and experiments that eat time and don't deliver the ROI. Does any of that sound familiar?
Yeah, I'm sure it does for a lot of you out there. You're feeling that pain, which is why next week we're going live with Pavilion on a special webinar that we have collaborated with them on called AI for Go-to-Market Leaders. And it's a foundational fluency for high impact adoption. And you guys, we felt like we really wanted to share a preview of what that's all about because we think you're going to find it really useful and helpful going forward.
And most of the GTM leaders, they're dabbling with AI. They're testing some tools, they're trying some prompts and hoping that just something clicks and sticks. But the real question is, what's happening in your org right now? Maybe one person is playing with prompts, but then no one else is really in the loop to benefit.
And the reason why is because dabbling doesn't scale. Fluency does. And the gap between those two things is getting wider every day.
And think about it. Dabbling is like when a single rep uses ChatGPT to rewrite their emails. It's helpful for them, but it's really invisible to the team. Or it's taking AI's first answer with no iterations or bias checks or any guardrails. And well, that could spell some trouble, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, the thing about it is, Shari, I think you really defined dabbling well. Fluency, on the other hand, is very different. Fluency is when the whole sales team shares, a 3C structured prompt for research. They use it consistently and they review the outputs together, or they have an assigned person who's in charge of that. When you're looking at one-off hacks versus a repeatable system, there's a clear difference. And when you look about that in the big picture within a corporate ecosystem, which one of those things do you think survives the budget cuts?
Well, first, they're just not doing any stress testing. The AI outputs drift or hallucinate, and nobody catches it before it matters. Have you ever noticed that your AI is giving you great answers one day and really a bunch of nonsense the next day? Well, that's called drift. And if you don't test for it, then you're automatically sending garbage out without knowing it.
Yep. And, Sherry, that's the first of like three big killers for AI pilots. The
Yep.
second one, aside from drift, which is huge, is weak business cases, right? This is as we like to say in business, we were taught by Bill Robinson is like, what do we win if we win, right? You have to ask those questions. So you've got teams that are playing with prompts instead of trying to tie AI to measurable ROI. And if you think about it through that context, like here's kind of a question. If your CFO asked, what's the bottom line impact of this pilot? Could you answer that today?
Well, that's a good question right there. And third is no team fluency. You have one person that really gets it, but without shared skills, the pilot cannot scale across the GTM org. How many times have you heard someone say, oh, Jenna, yeah, she's our AI person, but when she goes out on PTO, pilot dies, everything falls apart.
That's exactly true, Sherry. And, to recap, that's really the trifecta of AI pilot failure. You have unchecked hallucinations, you have business cases that are unfunded, and you have knowledge that's trapped in one person's head. So, we look at this as, the best antidote for this is to start with a role plan, right? If you anchor AI in your own deliverables, not the guy next to you and not the team down here, your own personal deliverables that matter, you're going to output things that are related to your exact function.
That is so true. And if any of you out there are a demand gen leader, you're not just targeting and testing AI, but you're using it to accelerate campaign timelines, improve targeting, and measure lift against the pipeline.
Yeah, it's a great example. Like if you're in RevOps, right? You're building workflows that reconcile CRM data faster and flag anomalies before they wreck your whole forecast.
Yeah, so let me ask you, have any of you actually written down the AI deliverables that are tied directly to your role? Or is that answer still, well, we're exploring that? Because a role plan would force you to make all of that very real.
I love that, Sherry. That's exactly true. And that's really what fluency is all about. It's using AI in a way that's specific, measurable, and repeatable.
So, what's the next step, you ask? Well, it's an AI pilot charter, and they have four basic parts. Part number one is problem and objectives. The second one is scope. What's in, what's out? Be very specific. The next one is guardrails. That is compliance, bias, and brand fit. You have to make sure you have all of those lined up. And the last one is measurable success windows and ROI metrics. And you just have to have that set before you run.
Exactly. Those things all need to be in place. And, we're going to take a second here and break those things down for you. So, starting with the first one, problem and objective. Instead of just dabbling or playing with AI, your objective can be something like reduce the time it takes to build campaign briefs by 40%, right? And, I ask you this question for these pilots that you're running right now in your organization. Could you explain your pilot in one single line like that?
The second one is scope. And what we say here is don't boil the ocean. So you start with one product line, one geography, and one team, one deliverable. Don't start with too much too fast. You just can't handle that.
Yeah, and I think this is such an important point because we see so many of the gains that come from AI are, like as we say, the death by a thousand cuts, right? Each one of those little things that you can accelerate is of value, especially when they can build upon one another. So don't think you have to go into an AI pilot thinking you have to build this entire system and this big giant workflow. Start simple. Start with something easy that you do a lot. get that thing to work, and then you can look at building it, scaling it, and building it out to other deliverables that are on your role plan. So anyway, sorry about that. Next up are the guardrails. This one is huge. When you're building your AI pilot, you need to set your bias checks. You need to set your rules for tone, and you need to set your compliance filters up front. And the reason you do that up front is so that you don't accidentally send out AI copy that violates policy or sounds off brand, or worse, exposes PII or has other privacy challenges. This one is super critical, and you just have to build it in up front. It's not that hard.
And then the next one is success windows and ROI metrics. Don't let this drag on for months. It's so easy to do. I get it. But you need to say, hey, in 8 weeks, we'll measure time saved, the quality improvement, and impact on the pipeline. Because let me just say, if your pilot doesn't have an end date, you're already setting yourself up for failure.
Yep, you pretty much always have to have a deadline, don't you?
Absolutely.
And with these sort of four approaches, this is how speed becomes safety. We talk a lot about risk, right? As we need to in organizations, and a lot of times the wait and see attitude is really the best way to avoid risk. But in AI, the script is actually flipped, because the models are evolving so quickly that you really can't afford to risk. And making the choice to wait to figure this thing out, to get rolling, to get things scaling, is actually riskier than just going now and figuring it out. So we're a big believer in that. What you don't want to just launch and hope. You need to stress test. You need to govern. Make sure this thing is working, and then let it scale.
Today, the high performers are not the ones that are trying the most tools. They're the ones that are building fluency into their teams.
Yep, they're the ones that orchestrate workflows. They build bias checks. They align outputs to revenue. And that's why AI pilots scale and others stall.
And here's the question: which camp are you in? One team is dabbling which AI tool they should buy next, and the other one already has a shared prompt library, a chartered pilot, and a quarterly ROI reporting. Which one do you think is going to get next year's share of the budget?
Exactly. That's such a good question. I think we know the answer. And that's really the difference between experimenting and executing.
That's right. So if you're a go-to-market leader, this is your fork in the road. Dabbling is done, and fluency is now the new baseline.
So, we want to make sure that all of you have the opportunity to join us at our live event with Pavilion. It's on Tuesday, September 16th. It's next week. And it's called AI for Go-to-Market Leaders, Foundational Fluency for High Impact Adoption. It is free to sign up. We would love to have you there. That would be awesome. We'll go ahead and drop the link into the show notes, and we hope to see you there.
Don't wait. The future is not slowing down, and neither should you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.